Hello, friends. Welcome back to Value Vintage Cards. Um, I'm going to do this as a kind of double VR, a little bit of a response. Sammy Thunder put out a fun video asking how we collect, talking a little bit about what drives our interests and what we're pulled towards. And then John Mangini mentioned in his video that he would not mind responses and just asking, kind of why we do what we do and how we explain our cards and a little bit of our collecting style. And those are two of the channels I watch every single video. And, two good friends. So, two folks that I message with and look to for advice and, collaboration and kind of experiencing the hobby together. So, I randomly picked cards. I just started pulling things. I pulled 10, and I'll redo something like this soon because my thought for a video was to pull 10 cards and say, this is what makes my collection unique and cool. And the reason being that I think if I pull the right 10, I could say I'm the only person on earth that has those 10. And I think that was part of Sammy's thought. It's rare, it's scarce. Um, is that interesting to you? Why is it interesting? And for me, it's that. When we're collecting, if you collect, we all want, $20 bills, $100 bills, but there's nothing special about it. It has value. It is, reusable, but if you go to the bank and swap one in, it's the exact same thing come back to you. I feel like that's what a lot of the cards are. And if you go to a card show, you can find a lot of, you know, vintage card X. But when you get into something that's unique, um, I collect $2 bills. I have some, silver coins from way back. And some of those have sentimental value because they were things that my grandma collected or my mom collected. So having that in my possession and my collection is that much more important to me. So I'm going to share some cards, and I think this will illustrate. One of John's questions was, why do we tear apart our cards? Probably, I'm sure I'm in the group that he's saying does that. Um, I will say this though, as I'm showing, I'm going to show one of the least scarce and unique items that I will show you today. But part of what makes it cool to me is this. The way I collect, I like well loved. I like for my budget to stretch. I'd rather have a super based out Bentley than a totally decked out Prius. That's just how my mind works. So something like this, Gaudi wide pen, it's a 90, almost 90-year-old card, item, if you don't want to call it a card because it's oversized. Uh, you know, I do like mentioning things like there was little creases. I think the one corner, a little crease that's not perfectly centered. I mention that because I almost want everyone to know things that don't bother me. I acknowledge they're there. Um, and yes, I hope folks can just look at that and appreciate it. I hope people just think that's the coolest card in the world because it is. It's such a great portrait shot of Hank Greenberg. What a great card. Um, Fantastic. But I think the focus on some of these things so much to say like it's not centered. It says 90 years old. You take what you can get, right? But I actually enjoy it. Like it bothers me zero looking at this. If centering somehow, your eyes get pulled to that and you don't love that it's not 50-50, that does nothing to me. So I'm completely fine with it. I don't even notice it until I kind of look back to see what's, critically right, wrong when you're putting in bids and whatnot. But I think it's important to call that out at times, more so as an explanation of why they're such a good value. This one I actually bid on pretty aggressively because of the writing on the back. I love things that make cards like to me that's not a super low grade looking card, but it went for low grade money. And I wouldn't call this particularly hard to get. Some people definitely would. And, back in the day, this might have sold for a penny. Um, and I say that because it does have some residue on the back. It looks like it was probably put into an album, but literally, when you look at the back of this, they are going to tell you that it is hard to get and that it should go for a penny. Make sure that shows up okay. How fun is that? So the back of this thing actually has some silliness to it. Um, for me, that makes the card special, though. I'm not going to go writing on my cards. It's 2025. But what I do appreciate is that somewhere, probably 70, 80 years ago, somebody was trying to sell that for a penny, and they actually wrote on the back that it's hard to get. So I enjoy that. It adds to the story. All right, let's get flying and illustrate my collection a little bit. Um, Taking a look at the 1955 Topps Sandy Koufax. I used to have that card. I used to have two of them. In fact, over time, I probably had three. I no longer have one. Um, Card Capital, you've got to make decisions what you want to keep, what you want to move on from. That was one that I had to kind of combine into a trade and move on from. Um, Now there's, I don't know, between SGC and PSA, close to 20,000 of them graded. So, and there's a lot of them ungraded. So I don't have a whole lot of fear that if I wanted to get that card back, I could. So Sandy Koufax rookie, fantastic card, no longer in my collection. What is in my collection is something like this, which is a 1958 Bell brand Sandy Koufax. Um, I find it interesting. Some people will say, like, I don't like the green. Like, it's fine. Um, I don't know that they're necessarily supposed to be fashion statements as much as just cool, unique pieces. Back of it's pretty clean, pretty nice copy, and it's a two. The other reason I point out conditioning sometimes, there's over 100 of these graded just by PSA, so there's probably a couple hundred, 400 graded, something like that. So it's not the most rare, scarce card in the world, but kind of in reverse. If you look at, let's pick on Nolan Ryan. Look at Nolan Ryan's rookie card. There's 20,000 of those graded as well. There's 68, I think it is, graded as a 9 just by PSA. I didn't check SGC. So there's 68 of those in a 9. There's probably a couple hundred of these graded. So when you look at scarcity, hard to find, and then these can get really expensive when you get into high grades, which makes me want to not have a high grade. I want to have a lower grade version. So I have to search out A's, ones, twos, 1.5s, whatever. I usually cap out and don't want something that's too nice. So let's keep that mindset going. There's 68 PSA 9 Nolan Ryans. There's, I think, 58 of this graded by PSA, period. And again, I'm sure there's a lot ungraded and it's not the most expensive item in the world. But when you look at Jackie Robinson items, um, I've had, the 53 Topps, the 54 Topps. I've traded out of those. I've had the Bowmans, kind of all of it. Still fantastic cards. At some point, I'd like to add them back, but it can be at some point. An item like this, you know, it's a year of range. It's a blank back, which is more rare. Actually, I guess the postcard back, there's 50 something. The blank back labeled is less. So it's a little bit tougher version. Um, so between the two, maybe there's 70 or 80. So you're somewhere in the same ballpark as what there are PSA 9 Nolan Ryan rookies. I'm not trying to down Nolan Ryan rookies in a PSA 9, obviously. I will take one of those if you'd like to pass one on to me. But um, in terms of rarity, scarcity, I think it gives good perspective on what you're looking at. So this card graded, period, is very, very similar in PSA submissions. Cool card. So it's a fun Jackie. It's an oversized Jackie, so it's always a win there too. Next one is going to be a Mangini special, and probably in Sammy's wheelhouse too. Player not so much, but it's more of a Mangini player. 73 tops pinups. I've shown this, and I will say this too. So it's my wheelhouse because there's like 15 graded. So I have one of 15. Some of them are graded very high. I think my copy looks pretty phenomenal in all fairness. The front, everything about it's great. It's not creased up, it's not wrinkled. Um, One of the things I will say I point out, because this is a one, it has some adhesive in the back corners. And somebody put on the, for display probably, and wanted it to present nicely. So they were cautious and put it in the corners. They didn't pinhole it. They didn't staple it to the wall or something. They were very cautious. And when it came off, the residue remained just a little bit in the corners. And so now it's a one, and now I can afford it. These in high grades go for thousands because there's so few. So to me, I am not just drawn to the fact there's 15. I'm drawn to the fact there's only 4 or 5 that are in my wheelhouse. I don't want an 8. I don't want to spend, I want to trade out a Ty Cobb for a Willie Stargell pinup. To me, that doesn't make any sense. And when I say Ty Cobb, I'm thinking a T206 for $2,000, not $18,000, because I don't want it in a 5 or a 6. I want it in a 1. A couple others that I will share. How do I collect? I love ungraded stuff. There's 2 of these actually on eBay right now. There's a 2 that's going for somewhere over $5,000, and there's an authentic that I will say when I point things out. This is a blender copy. This one's got all the holes and staining and all the things on it. I think sometimes I say that too, just in case somebody maybe can't see it as well on camera because between glare and camera doing whatever it does, sometimes you can't see every little detail. Um, I enjoy the details of it. If it has like hot dog staining, so it's a cons, like that adds texture and story to the card. So sometimes acknowledging it isn't so much, to criticize. It's to just acknowledge the story that goes with that particular item. At least in my world, that's how I look at it. I think, yeah, it's weird when someone criticizes a 4 and says, "I wish I had a 5." Like, all right, I think it's the number you're chasing, not the condition. This one I actually love. The authentic that's out there. I probably wouldn't go after myself, and I'm sure I've done it, but not on such a big card. But the bottom here was cut off, so it's just a picture. And for me, part of the con's coolness is having that little bottom thing. It says the wiener the world awaited. That's just good middle school boy humor, right? Um, Next up that I'm going to share, just shared this on a live, but it's a card that I don't know if I knew this existed necessarily. I'm sure some hardcore collectors are laughing at my ignorance, but um, for many of us, this is probably something that's off the beaten path and not something we were necessarily tracking or even aware existed. Dizzy Dean Service Station card, 1938. I think there's 7 graded. Mine's not. So it's top 8. I mean, who knows? Um, but it's tough to find. What's really neat, the back of it is phenomenal. Dizzy Dean Service Station goes through everything, standard oil. I showed this on a live recently with Sammy and some friends, Jay and Steven. And for me, I think something like that is unique, cool image, regional, like all that stuff starts to really explain how I collect. I think those are really key ingredients to what draws my interest. All right, I said I had 10. I've got 4 more. This next one actually is way too nice of condition. I just looked this morning. PSA is graded 19 of them. SGC, I would say probably the same. And this one is one that has variations of backs, so maybe there's more of them out there. But this thing, it's graded as a 6. M101-4. As I'm recording this, we're, what, a day or two past Pete Rose and the Black Sox players being kind of back to being eligible and recognized by MLB. So ban lifted. Um, Look how clean that card is. So I won't say that if I criticize, it's because most of my cards are A's and ones. I would not have wanted to buy it in this condition, but the price on it was so phenomenal. I think. I mean, I thought it was going for half of what I would have expected. So, um, the chance to add a beautiful copy of this to my collection. And something else that's somewhat unique is I don't have many, if any, with the sporting news on the back. Most of them are blank backs. So I thought it was cool to pick one up like that. But that's high end for me for sure, especially for something this old. So 1916 M101-4 -4-5 tend to look pretty darn similar. But Happy Felch, Black Sox player, was actually on his way to a great career. I don't think he played long enough to have Hall of Fame eligibility, even if he would have had a chance to have played. His career was kind of on that trajectory. He was solid. He was an all-star type player, pre-all-star game era, but he was in that solid, good defense, solid hitter kind of realm. Um, but unfortunately, he didn't get a chance to play his 10 years and was caught up in all that. I think he was Charlie Sheen in the movie 8 Men Out. So, last three, to show something like this. Um, and I will say, I mean, this is higher numerical grade than I would have wanted. John picked one of these up in a 1. I was stuck getting the 2, but there's 11 graded. So there's 9 in circulation because John has 1, I have 1. We're not going to let these things go. So, what is this if you're less familiar? There's the flip, 1930, 1930. I almost tried to add another number there. Blue Ribbon Malt, Rogers Hornsby Premium. So Hornsby's the biggest one in that set, I believe. So I would assume with 11 graded, that's probably about as many as you're going to have graded of anyone else. Now, do those exist ungraded? Of course. In fact, here's one from that set ungraded. So Gabby Hartnett actually has a lower population than Rogers Hornsby. And that's only if you think for some reason every card in the world's graded. Of course there's less. Mine's ungraded. When you have a card that's, hundreds and hundreds and pushing 1,000, you have an expensive card, and those can go for thousands, I'm sure. The Rogers Hornsby card, you probably send that in for grading, more likely than not if you're looking at the investment side of things. On this end, the Gabby Hartnett end, these could be $100, a couple $100. Not everybody's going to send that in. Grading's expensive. You get into those gaudy tray table slabs. I don't worry about the slab at all. Um, Tray tables are just funny, and they still keep the cards safe, and that's really all I care about. So I'm not going to crack it out to have to buy another case to put it into. I'm totally fine with that. But the Gabby Hartnett, I'll never send that in for grading either. Just really, really cool image, tough set. I think it's safe to say there's maybe dozens of them at most, probably less. But those two being in the same set, one graded, one ungraded, is kind of perfect. And this last one I'm going to show you is a PSA Pop 1. I saw this. I'm not even sure how I came across this, honestly. It's not a player I search for. It's not a set I search for. I don't even know if it's a set. I think there's been proven to be 2 of them. Um, Even the year is not clear. We call it a 1959. Someone else called it a 63. PSA, like I said, it's a Pop 1. PSA called it a 1959. There's currently one available on eBay. There was two on eBay. It was a best offer or buy it now. I just went ahead and did the buy it now, um, because this checks so many boxes for me. Like I said, I don't have a Sandy Koufax rookie anymore. But what draws me as a collector is something that's rare, something that no one else is going to be able to find. And my trigger that I need to go after it is, if I wait, can I get it again? Um, I messaged the seller and he said he knows of three, and he's been collecting Sandy Koufax for 35 years. And lived in New York and California. So he's a seasoned veteran collector. He's been to national. He's been to all the regional shows. He's done it all. And he said, I saw one other at a show, and then he saw this one that he purchased, and he's had for years and years and years. And he said, and there's one on eBay, which is crazy. The one on eBay is nicer, and it's extremely expensive, uh, and it's not the graded one. So I would say there's at least four, because of this collector's history. Maybe four is close to what there is. But it is I think, 1959 Big Treat, TV Treat, frozen dessert. I think I've seen it labeled as all those different things of Sandy Koufax. So you talk about like when you mention what's going on with it. I think the one that PSA graded is authentic. Uh, all of them that I've seen, which is possibly 50% of the population, have some well loved features to it. The one that's on eBay is nicer, but it's also price of a car. This one was not, but it was still not cheap. Um, but for me, can I go get his Topps rookie card in a one for the same price? Yeah. Can I go get that tomorrow? Sure. Can I get this tomorrow? No, I won't find it. It might not sell again this decade. And for me, that's when it triggers like, do I want to go buy it now and see if I can get like $30 off? Probably not. I probably want to just go ahead and jump, because if I miss this, I'm going to say, yeah, for $30. That one got away. So I've had it happen. I'll send in an offer and I'll say, hey, is this close enough? And then it disappears. Someone else said, I don't need close enough. I'll just take it. So sometimes I just jump. But if you look at all the fine details of this thing, I think it is so neat. It's all facsimile stuff. The seller was educating me on this. He said, I think, Sandy was not known for being an advertising guy. This is probably near the end. The other player that they can find is Carl Furillo. And it was probably towards the end of his career. So he was going for a little bit of little bonus payday if he could. So he probably brought his good friend Sandy Koufax along for the ride and said, we'll be your local advertising. So this is before Koufax would have been good. He was still kind of early career and, okay, but definitely not great at this stage of his career. So Farillo was going for kind of a late career payday, and Koufax would have been hey, no one else wants me to advertise. So that's not really his route and path, but he went along with his friend is the theory. Um, you can't obviously verify that unless we sit down with Mr. Koufax and discuss that. But uh, the fact that there's so few, the fact that it's oversized, the fact that just you need a copy. So yeah, there's holes in it, there's rips, there's tape on the back. The signature, um, there actually is a signature kind of middle of the item. It looks like it's been rubbed out, like almost like somebody tried to rub it off. There's a couple that actually have signatures that look like they were trying to be removed. No one's sure. Maybe they were actually signed. For a while it was bugaboo to have a signature on card. So maybe somebody tried to rub it off. Maybe because it couldn't be authenticated, someone tried to remove it. I don't know. I guess authentication would have depended on how long the sellers owned it, but he said he's been looking at these for, you know, collecting Sandy for 35 years and only seen two. So they're pretty tough. But that's uh that's the last piece. And funny as it is, I think if I just took these 10 pieces, grade aside, just these 10 cards, I bet no one else has these 10 cards. So that's kind of fun and cool. I did not intend for this to be such a long, lengthy video, but I wanted to kind of respond to both Sammy and John in slightly different ways. So how I collect is exactly that. Why I point out some of the issues. Um, I'll try and do that less, maybe. But I think my intention is not to criticize my cards and say, look how junky they are. It's more so to say, look how minor this is, or acknowledge that there's writing on the back. But I think that's actually a pretty cool feature to my Hank Greenberg card. I actually enjoy that more. I actually went after that specific card more because I liked having somebody writing on that, 80, 90 years ago, um, as they were trying to sell it for a penny. I think that like adds to the story. So sometimes I acknowledge those things, as more so. This is the value vintage approach, and this is why I appreciate the card exactly as it is, with the tears, with the tape, with the writing, with all the stuff. Like to me, that's still just part of the story, and it's in my collection for a reason. So that's what I got for you today. I'm probably gonna do this again. I'm gonna pull 10 cards and say no one else on earth has these 10. um, I think that would be a really cool VR to kind of continue the discussion. It falls right in line with Sammy's idea, um, and kind of continuing that conversation of how do you collect, what makes your collection unique, what makes your collection special. I think that's all in the fun realm. So I'll add to this again and do another 10 cards, and uh, some of these I probably should use again, but we'll have some fun. I'll try and find some other fun, unique things. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.